So now it's time to move to the back. So when it comes to doing a package design similar to this, let's go ahead and get rid of some of all this extras. What you do is you have the front side and then you'll have the back side connected to it in the same document, because the way they're going to print this is they're going to print this all on one big plastic sheet and then they're going to fold it together to create the package design. This is how a lot of boxes work too. You won't have separate files. You won't have a separate file for the back and the side. They'll all be one file that folds together after they print it. So they're going to print it on one item and then fold and glue everything together. So we're going to make it easy on everybody. We're going to go to File, Document Setup. We're going to double the size of our artboard. We're going to double it. So if, let's say, it's 10 inches in width, let's do 20 inches in width. Okay, and so we already have this down the middle. So now we know this is a down the middle side. So I'm just going to do a little indication of where that is with a nice red line. So now I know where the front ends and the back begins. So this is exactly how you'll send the file. Of course, you'll get rid of this little red mark. That's just for me personally. And you'll export this as one final PDF, which will go through all the steps of properly exporting a file for print. So what we want to do is we want to extend the background all the way to the side. And here's where it gets a little bit challenging. We can either have this end, which is totally fine because we have a front and a back. You don't really have a side on this particular package design. So it's okay if it abruptly ends. If you had maybe a box, it might be neat to continue that over to the other side, and you can always duplicate this. Transform or just reflecting it, just doing a simple reflect. And you can always do something like that to kind of continue it onward, but we're going to see what the back entails first. And so this top portion, and this is just for me, I don't want to send this to the printer, but I'm just doing a special marking to indicate where on the package I need to leave blank, because this is going to be where the package seals. So I can't put any design elements there because that's where you have the little zipper or the seal for the package. So I'm just doing a very light color here just to this is just for me to help me out, a little guide. So a lot of times manufacturers will send you a template, and that's fantastic. You want them to send you a template. You don't have to set all this up yourself. You put the design on there and you're done. But sometimes you have to set up yourself. So we're going to do that in this case. Okay, so the back, we're going to need two main elements. And these are elements, thankfully, you don't have to design. These are things the manufacturer or the client will have to send you. The first one is going to be nutrition facts. And I have this little file I found for free online, and I'll give you the link to be able to find that in the resource guide, so you don't have to sit there and create one from scratch. You, as a graphic designer, you're never responsible for creating the nutritional facts. That is something that is supplied and is something that's required by law to be in a certain way. So you do not have to worry about that. That will be provided to you by a client, so don't worry. That's a lot you'd have to design, so thank goodness. And another thing is the barcode. Once again, you do not have to design the barcode. The client will send you a barcode when they receive that. So that's another thing you don't have to worry about. I'm just going to grab, this is another file I have in the resource guide, just a link to it. But you can use any barcode that you find for free online. So there's our barcode. So these are things that are just going to be required to be on the back no matter what. So what I want to do is we could do a couple of things here. We can either extend the green over, or we can have a white back. It's just going to depend. I kind of like extending the color over, so maybe we can find a way to make some of this white down here on the bottom. And maybe we take this, we reflect it again and make this white. You know, it all depends. Just really want that barcode to be legible. I like to put barcodes on white. It's not required, but I really like to have that available. So I don't really like how that looks right now, but we'll get to that later. Let's go ahead and remove this little drop shadow here. Not a big fan of that. We can get rid of that. So nutrition facts, usually, you can kind of see it on the side going down the middle. Of course, this is the area that I can't put information on. So maybe right here we also need an ingredients list, and we also need a little bit of a product description. So I'm going to go ahead and write that up so you can have that. So I think we could do something a little bit different with the back. I have a couple headlines we want to have in here, and I have a little bit of a description of the product that I want to have in here as well. I'm going to go ahead and paste that in here. I have it right here. I'm just going to copy. And what I like to do is create a rectangle tool. And I like to go ahead and select the type, our area type tool. What this will do is this will paste. I'm going to do it right here in the corner. I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste that. And what's great about this, instead of having to do manual line breaks, I can go ahead and have a paragraph that works just like InDesign. Kind of nice for controlling copy. So all I did was made a square, and then I did the area type tool on the top left corner and just pasted in my information. There's one more thing I need to add, and that's going to be ingredients. So let me go ahead and add that right here, right underneath. So I'm going to tuck the ingredients right underneath the nutrition facts, and here's where we can maybe use a photo to further tell our story, because just having it on a green background just doesn't seem to be working. Let's also apply some similar type work here. And mint flavor in every bite. We could even borrow some of this ribbon and do something very similar here. Put that down below. Let's use Railway. It's nice. This is a nice typical font to use for body copy, just nice and easy. And we're going to talk about layout and paragraphs a little bit later in the class and further layout projects. But what I like to do is I like to add a little spacing between the lines. So I'm going to increase right here the leading. Just going to go ahead and increase that a little bit to add a little breathing room. I'm going to make that white. I'm also going to tighten this a little bit. Just tighten those lines. We can even make that brown, but I don't think that's looking too good at this point. So here's kind of the basic elements in the back, but I feel like it's missing something. It needs some kind of photo or something to draw me in. So I went ahead, and there's a website called Unsplash, which is another great place to find free photos. I'd love to add another chocolate chip cookie photo on the back to really add something there. So I have a few here. Let's first try this one, and let's see how it looks on the entire document. Sort of sending it to back and then bringing it forward. I think this could look really good. I wonder if we change the blending mode a little bit. Not really feeling that. Let's go ahead and keep it normal. This might be a situation where we need to open it in Photoshop and do a little editing, but I really like this. I am worried about the barcode not showing up, but that's okay because we can just take this and make it white. You always want that barcode to be very, very readable. It'd be a shame if the barcode, for some reason, could not be scanned after you printed thousands of these. That would be such a shame. So there's a little practicality in everything. So let's kind of line up this curve. Let's not worry about it so much continuing over just because it doesn't have a spine or a side. It just harshly ends. I'm going to bring that down and have that be there. So what we could do is we can make this particular background. We could even make this brown. Make it a nice chocolate color instead of green. And take this photo and somehow play with the blending modes like overlay, luminosity, reduce the opacity a little bit, just so you have subtle hints of that cookie right there, just a little chocolate chip cookie. And then we'll want to make sure this is the same size as this body copy, and maybe make ingredients a little bit bolder. There we go. See how we made that bolder? It kind of chops everything up a little bit. And this might need to be a thicker weight because it now has to be over a photo. So let's make that semi-bold and increase the spacing. And with package design, sometimes it's harder to get away with a lower sized typeface. So let's increase the size to 14 and expand it down a little bit. And sometimes a drop shadow is required as well. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to shift this over so you can see what I'm doing. I am going to go to Stylize and just adding a drop shadow just for readability, really, not necessarily for styling or anything. Okay, so just add a little drop shadow. I think this is coming along. Let's do another little dividing line here. I love dividing lines, really helps to break up the headline and the copy there. What I'd love to do is incorporate the mint somehow. What if we took fresh and we adapted that color? We want to bring in that mint color somehow. And it could be that we reverse this out and we have this in white or in black or in actually better brown. So mint flavor in every bite, or brown and then add this as mint. Just like that. A lot of trial and error and finding out what works with spacing. Okay, so we need to make sure we have enough margin on the edges. There's something called a safety, and this is just like a border around the document that the printer does not want you to put any active text on or any really important photos on. So make sure you have a certain margin that's clear all the way around, and we may need to shift this up a little bit. Just make sure we have enough margin all the way around both the back and the front. You got to kind of think of these as independent sides because they're going to be viewed independently. You're going to see the front, they're going to flip it over and see the back. And so there's not going to be really a spine, so that's just going to be a sharp transition to the back. So you could even line up this little curve here with this if you really wanted to. So there we have it. Let's go ahead and eliminate this. And it looks like we need to extend that all the way up to the top. That's going to be part of the package design. Move the photo up here. Or we can feather this if we wanted to. So we're going to go to Effect, Stylize, and we're going to feather this just a little bit so it blends in naturally to the top. Great. I'm feeling pretty good about that. I think there's always room for improvement, but I think for this demonstration, I think we have something here. I think the logo also needs to be on the back as well. That could be a requirement. So Farm to Table logo will fit right there in that little space. So I think that would probably be important to see. So let's do the same thing we did before. Let's go ahead and export this as a JPEG. And a lot of things, this is kind of how you'd prepare it for print. So let's go ahead and eliminate this. We don't need that anymore because that was just for me or for us. And we just want to go around and just make sure everything lines up. We don't want any elements from the back spilling over to the front since there's not a consistent look across the panels. Just make sure they end perfectly. So I'm just using the direct selection tool and lining everything up perfectly. Okay. Just going up the side and making sure nothing crosses over. It's one of the first things I check. That looks good. Make sure there's margins all the way around both sides. That's good. Check. I also might not need to make that as big, so just going to make that a little bit smaller, just little final tweaks. And then right when I feel like I'm done with the layout, one thing I want to do is I want to create outlines on all the type, because right now some of these are editable, and we don't want the printer to have the fonts installed for him to open up your PDF, so we're going to create outlines on everything. So I'm going to do Select All to select, it's the easy way to select everything, and we're going to go to Type and go all the way down to Create Outlines. So it's going to create outlines on all the type. If you're using stroke anywhere, see there's a little stroke around there, you also want to outline your strokes. So I'm going to select all. I'm going to go, I know this is a lot, but you can always pause, rewind. We're going to go down to Path, Outline Stroke. So we outlined the type and now we're outlining the stroke, which we only had one stroke, I believe. So what I like to do is select all again and just make sure all the type is outlined, and you can tell when you see all these little outlines, and then I can no longer edit the type, which is fine because I just approved the document myself. I don't need to go back and change anything. So I know I can't edit it, it's all outlined. That's great, that's perfect. Exactly what we need. So let's go ahead and zoom out one last time. We also want to make sure we are in a CMYK environment. So So we just want to select all. Make sure the way you check is go to File, Document Color Mode, and make sure it's on CMYK if you're doing any kind of professional print work. So we're going to make sure it's set on that mode. If you ever need to convert anything to CMYK, you can go to Edit, Edit Colors, and go down to Convert CMYK. I just threw a lot at you, so please feel free to re-watch these last couple minutes to get an idea. And sometimes if you designed, you always need to start a document in CMYK because you can already have the colors in the right mode. But let's say you did this. Let's say you had an RGB and you started a new document in RGB mode, which happens by accident a lot, and you create a print document. Well, that print document needs to be converted to CMYK, which we just did. But sometimes when you do that conversion, the colors can get a little dull. So you can see how the mint color, and anytime we use that light mint color, it dulled it out. All the other colors are fine. So all we have to do is go in and manually adjust these back to what we think would be a nice bright color for CMYK. That's all we have to do. Kind of brighten those up a little bit. And CMYK does not, you'll notice a big difference between CMYK options and RGB. RGB seems to be much more vivid and bright because it's for the screen, and CMYK colors seem to be more dull. So you just have to kind of work with that. Print colors are never as exciting and as bright as the RGB counterpart colors. That's always the challenge when doing print design.